All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome back. We are in the middle of a long conversation we're going to have over the next few weeks about honoring parents. And if you missed last week's class, then just be mindful that last week was an introduction to so much of the conversations we're going to be having over the next few weeks. So just a very quick recap is that what we said last week in a nutshell was that the whole purpose of that relationship between parent and child is to help a child recognize that there's something that came before him. It's about humbling them to recognize that there is a hierarchy in the relationships, and that it goes from us to our parents, and hopefully from our parents to God. And that's why we'll see hopefully soon that the fifth commandment, which is the bridge between the 10 commandments, between the first half and the last half. The first half are those commandments that have to do with our relationship with God, and the last half which have to do with our relationship with humanity. Okay. Okay, so let's just go straight through the sheet. We're going to fly through this quickly, and then at any point, if you have any questions, if you have anything you want to add, anything you want to share, and we'll keep it anonymous. If you have to turn off the recording, I'm happy to do so. But the purpose of this class is to hopefully help us have a deeper understanding and appreciation of what Kibbud Av V'Em is, so that when we deal with parents, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, hopefully you'll have a strategy that helps you be the best at this particular mitzvah. Now, it's probably important to say that the Midrash tells us that it does not make a distinction between any of the mitzvot as far as reward goes. And it actually points out the shluach haken, the idea of shooing away the mother bird to take the egg, is the same kind of reward as one honoring the parents. Both of them give you long life. Now, everyone will agree that honoring your parents is way more complicated than shooing a bird away to take its eggs. So how can you go ahead and have exactly the same reward? And what the Chachamim point out is that the reason why we don't really talk about the reward for any mitzvah is because we would just do a very quick cost analysis, figure out which mitzvot give me the most reward, and those are the things we're all going to be investing our time in, nothing else, right? So there is no difference between one mitzvah and another mitzvah, but everyone will agree that one of the most difficult of all the mitzvot to actually accomplish, I would argue, is this one, Kibbud Av V'Em. Especially in 2024, when we all think that we know more and better than our own parents, it's very hard to find a space where we could actually go ahead and honor them and respect them. So listen to what Rav Dessler says. We're number one. He says, everyone wants children. There are two motivations. Number one, we feel that children will be a continuation of ourselves after we leave the world. And number two is we have an innate need to have someone whom to lavish love and kindness. This is why childless people will often adopt children and raise them as their own. Some will even have a dog, or others will have a pet, and lavish affection onto them as if they were children. I've seen this. I don't know. There's these like strollers now, and I think I'm looking to see children in there, and I see animals in there. It's fascinating. Now this is new thing now. I'm not sure if it's a dog thing or a cat thing. I've only seen it with cats where there's they wear like a backpack, and there's like a window in the backpack, and like they're carrying this cat with them like a baby Bjorn. All right, this is clearly an indication of the deep seated power of giving to the human soul. So Rav Dessler very simply says that there's the innate drive in every single human being to want to give. Every single person here wants to be a giver at their core. Often, when you find people who are super narcissistic and only think about themselves over and over again, that is often a result of trauma and other things that they've gone through in their own lives where they need to protect themselves. They're not in a giving state. But a healthy person, by the way, is someone who wants to always be giving. So when you go to like an event and you see people volunteering, those are the good catches. The people that avail themselves and want to give to other people, the people that want to go ahead and give back, those are very special people. They're honing in and flexing their giving skills. The Gemara in Kiddushin number 2 says, Rabbi Yochanan said, happy is the one who never saw them. Rabbi Yochanan's mother was pregnant with him. His father died. She gave birth to him. She died. What's the Gemara saying over there? Gemara is saying that the challenge of Kibbud Av V'Em is so great that in many ways it's better not to have met them. It's too hard. So he's in a better position because he never suffered the consequences of not fulfilling Kibbud Av V'Em properly. And this was it's kind of like a shvach. This was a praise to Rav Yochanan that he never had to do it. Now, that's a very negative thing, a negative way of of saying it. So look what Rashi says. Happy is one who never saw them because it is impossible to fulfill. This is Rashi, by the way. Rashi wrote this 1,000 years ago. Okay? He says, happy is the one who never saw them because it is impossible to fulfill the honor due to them to the level required. And one will be punished because of the lack of honor for them. Right? We see this, by the way, with whom? With Esther, in Megillat Esther. Right? That she was an orphan. And because of her orphan status, she had special status that was able to, that enabled her to do all the things that she had, all of her protection, everything that she had, was a result of her not having to have messed up with Kibbud Avim. Now, the question we should all be asking, by the way, with Esther, is why was that the one mitzvah that was so important during that time? Well, think about it for a moment. This is the first time in 1,000 years that Jews were immigrants to another country, right? So they had all these Israelis who are living now in Persia, right? And now you have Israeli parents with Persian children and grandchildren. So what do the children think? What do my parents know? They're foreigners, they're immigrants, and that is where there's a breakdown of Kibbud Avim immediately. When you have parents that are immigrants to this country, it is very difficult to afford them honor because they're immigrants. Let's just face it, they don't understand the culture the same way, and therefore there's going to be a little bit of a disconnect between parent and child. And in that generation, I would imagine that there was a rampant case of lack of Kibbud Avim, okay, which kind of like added to the fact that the Jewish people were going to be wiped off the planet at that time. And the only one girl in town who had the schut, the merit to save the Jewish people, was the one girl who was not suffering from a lack of Kibbud Avim. Okay, that's how powerful it is. And where Rashi himself says, you know what, it's such a hard thing. Like most people get it. Most people mess it up. Why do you think it's so hard to do Kibbud Avim? Yeah.
Because when you realize that your parents have faults, you start blaming your parents for all your issues rather than having your
Okay, so yeah, we recognize our own issues and then we see them in our parents, and they're at fault. What else? Go ahead. I can't hear you. What? Okay, good. We resent the amount of control that they have. Okay, what else?
It's hard to balance honoring your parents and honoring yourself.
Oh, very good. It's very difficult to balance honoring your parents as it is to honor yourself. Good. What else? Yeah.
Your parents like you a lot more than you like them.
Your parents like you a lot more. That's very true. And therefore, there's always going to be a disconnect over there. Your parents are going to be overbearing sometimes and overwhelming, and they don't know how to create proper boundaries because they think they own you. This is a problem. No question about it. By the way, you know where we see that idea from very clearly? What was the first boy? What was his name? What? You know what Cain means? Ki kanita et adam, because I create. The word kinyan means an acquisition, right? I created a son. It's mine, right? The first woman to give birth to a baby boy, okay, called him kinyan, Cain, right? And on a subconscious level, I would imagine that's what the Torah is teaching you over there, like a subconscious truth, is that one of the challenges of parents is this thinking of like, I made you, and you're mine, and therefore I can tell you what to do, and I can haunt you and drive you absolutely insane for the rest of your life, and there's nothing you can do about it. As a matter of fact, parents often feel that they can get away with saying anything because it's my kid, I can say anything I want. That's not true. You want to add something?
I'm just curious, like, if you're going to say that, then what was God's intention of making Adam and Adam?
Well, Adam had to do with Adamah, meaning the potential. That's all it is. Right? The earth represents potential that has not come forward yet until you invest in it, which is actually a very appropriate name for Adam. Yeah.
So is the status of parents transfer over ever to like adopted parents or foster parents, or is that
It's a great question. Yeah, well, yeah, there is a level of responsibility you have to an adopted parent. Now, this is actually a case that I've heard of. It's not too long ago. There was a kid, a guy who I know, and not a kid, he's an adult, 35-year-old, who was adopted. He had adopted parents, and when he was 35, he found out that his living father was still alive. And now the question is who does he honor first? Right? If you have a scenario, that famous question, if your father asks you for a glass of water, your mom asks you for a glass of water, who goes first? Everyone know what the answer is? What? No, not necessarily. Yeah, mom and dad ask you at exactly the same time. It's impossible. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, they ask you at exactly the same time, get me a glass of water. Who do you have to bring the water to first? Why the mother, though? What? No, it actually goes to the father. So the reason why it goes to the father is because the mother has a responsibility to care for the father. And therefore, the child has to go ahead and fulfill the father's responsibility first. Mother's responsible to the father. So for example, let's say the father or the mother asks for a sweater. They're feeling cold. At the same exact time, who do you bring that sweater to first? Why? Because the father has a responsibility to the mother to clothe her and pretend, make sure that she's modest. As a matter of fact, halachically speaking, if a situation arises where a mother and father are destitute and one of them to go out and ask for help and money, it's the husband's responsibility to do that for the wife, to protect her and to make sure that she's modest at all times. That's part of his responsibility. So anything to do with modesty, where the father has an obligation to the mother, the child's responsibility is to do whatever that parent's obligation is to the other first. Okay? So, yeah.
Where do we see that the mother has a responsibility to do for the father?
Where do we see that? We see that first one, halakha. It's clear. Shulchan Aruch states very clearly that a woman has a responsibility to care for a husband's well-being, and it goes through some of those things are like food, like super important, like good food, super important, and but yeah, that's a woman's responsibility is to provide sustenance for her husband. The husband's responsibility is to provide the means for all that.
I feel like it's a lot more direct than it's supposed to be seen to a husband.
Yeah, I think it's.
Woman's responsibility to prepare it, perhaps, make it available.
Well, we know that if let's say your mother, your parents asks you to do something, and your husband asks you to do something, who do you do it first? It actually goes to your husband first. Yes, this is a complete misconception. Your responsibility goes to your spouse before your parents. Okay, your responsibility goes to you. It says, that's why the pasuk says, it says like he clings to her, he leaves the house of his parents, and therefore that relationship creates some kind of synergy where now they have a responsibility to each other. So if parents and grandparents ask at the same time, that's a complicated thing, right? Because the grandparents has to come first, because now the parents' responsibility is to take care of the grandparents, right? So it creates this hierarchy of responsibility in relationships. So whoever has the greater responsibility, that's where we go to first. But you have to know what the laws are. Is it very warm out here? Okay, it's just warm up because I'm speaking. Can someone is there water there? Someone mind giving me some water? Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. So, that's what that is. Okay, great. Let's keep going. So we have the pasuk says, "V'kibed et avicha ve'et imecha." My mom loves this pasuk. Laman yerichun yemecha al ha'adama asher Hashem Elokecha naten lach. Here is a straight out verse. This is the fifth of the Ten Commandments. Honor your father and your mother, and it says the father first, and therefore your response. Oh wow, two. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyah bidbaro. I needed that. I'm going to finish these guys. All right. Yeah, is it? Well, I didn't know that. No, I appreciate this. This is not rude at all. This is awesome. Thank you. Right. No, more is better. Okay, anyway. So, not always, but anyway, so, okay, fine. So you have the Ten Commandments. We know what the Ten Commandments are, and you see a hierarchy. The first 10 are all represent this concept of man to God, right? I am your God, right? You have no other gods before me, okay? You can't name, take my name in vain. Remember Shabbat, okay? The bridge between those two physical worlds and a spiritual realm. Man and to his parents. The bridge between humanity and God. Why is that the bridge? Is it clear now why it is? If you can't honor your parents, if you can't see yourself as being a spark of the divine, how are you going to see in somebody else? And the answer is you're not. You're not going to see in somebody else. Therefore, the prerequisite, so important, by the way, when you're looking at people for marriage potential, okay, the people that have a healthier relation with their parents, okay, I would always say are a better match than someone who has a horrible relationship. It's not always true. There are some good people that have bad parents. There are situations where parents are really bad. There are situations where parents can forfeit some of their honor on some level, forfeit some of the yira, the awe that's supposed to be given to them, no question about it. But even in a situation where they've abandoned you, your responsibility is to find something good in a parent, no matter how bad they are. Even if they're consistently bad, at least they're consistent, and therefore you could honor that. Find something. That was a joke. Anyway, find something that was okay. It's very late. Got it. Fine. All right, fine. Thou shalt not murder. We see all those are between man and man. Okay. Pasuk in Vayikra. Ish imo aviv tira'u ve'eshvelatai tishmaru and Yeshem elkechem. Again, this interesting, correlation mother-father over here. It switches it. Before we saw in the pasuk before, it says you have to honor the father and the mother, and over here it says specifically you have to fear the mother and the father. It switches that, right? Why? Simply because it's more natural for someone to fear the father and more natural to honor the mother. And therefore the pasuk is always writing something to create some kind of counterweight to challenge us as human beings. And therefore it's going to say honor your father and your mother because it's so easy to honor the mother. She's always taking care of you. Much more difficult to honor the father. Much more difficult to fear the father. Much more difficult to, much more easier. It's easier to fear the father. It's much more difficult to fear the mother, which is why it says the mother first. Great. It says, Umake aviv imo mot yumot. Anyone who hits his father and mother, according to Jewish law, has to be executed, put to death. Okay, the one who steals a man, okay, you got to get rid of him also. Mekalel aviv et imo mot yumat. Now, these are all very intense. Why is it so stringent? Right. By the way, these are the legal laws that would prevent a doctor from performing surgery on a parent. Right. The question is, if he has to go ahead and do like a surgery, cut the guy's leg off, is he, a child, a doctor who's performing a surgery on a parent? Is he creating a wound that would obligate him to that would put him into this category of make aviv v'imo? Complicated questions. Okay. What is honor and what is fear? And what is the difference between the two of them? How is honoring a parent different than fearing a parent? Question number 2. Why is long life the reward for honoring the parents? Question number 3. Why is the reward for long life given at the land by which Hashem, your God, gives you, the land of Israel? It's a sick question. Okay. Why in the commandment to honor the parents is the relationship mentioned first, whereas the commandment to fear parents and mothers is mentioned, whereas in the commandment to fear the parents, the mother is mentioned first, right? We asked that question. Then the commandments are divided into 2 groups of 5 and 5. The first concerning the relation between man and God. Second 5 to do with the worship, the relation between man and man. Why is that? Why is the commandment to honor the parents included in the first set of 5, seeing the concern relation between the people? Number 6, what is the significance of the 2 commandments? And why did the prohibition of kidnapping anyone, specifically parent, interrupted the 2 parent commandments, not to hit and not to curse the parents? All great questions. So let's try to answer it. Vayikra. Number 9, Rashi says, his mother and his father shall fear you. Here, the mother precedes the father, not the latter, since it is revealed to him, the Almighty, that the son who fears the father more than his mother, concerning the honor, the father precedes the mother, since it is revealed to them. So it's super clear that we understand that the nature is such where honoring goes to the father, and the mom, and fear goes to the father, and therefore the opposite is true. Sefer Chinuch. It is fitting, number 10, that a person acknowledges and acts kindly to one who has done good for him, and not to be unmindful and unappreciative, since this is an attribute which is repulsive both in the eyes of God and man. Meaning, everyone wants to be with someone who's has some hakaras hatov, and if you don't have the ability of honoring your parents, you might be suffering from a lack of showing hakaras hatov, and that's a problem. How could you be married to someone who can't show some kind of gratitude for the little things that you do? Right? But did I thank you for the water? Thank you so much. So, sorry, I got to roll my sleeves. It's too hot here for me. Okay. Sefer Chinuch continues. And it says as follows. One should bear in mind that one's father and mother are the reason that one exists in this world. Therefore, it is only fittingly that one should show them every possible respect, to do them every service he can. since they brought him into this world and labored greatly on his behalf during his childhood. Once a person has acquired this trait, he will ascend from it to be grateful for the good that is done for him by God, who is the cause of his being and the cause of his ancestors reaching back to Adam. Therefore, the whole purpose of Kibbud Av V'Em, and this is a repetition, is really, again, Hakarat HaTov. Why is it so important for you to be mindful of halachot? Well, it's very simple. If you're not mindful of the Hakarat HaTov you need to have for your parents, very possible that you won't have the ability of just being grateful to God. And if you're not going to be grateful to God, how can you be grateful to other people? Every human being is a spark of the divine. Every single person is a creation of God, right? How can you not see the greatness in those individuals? And the reason why you're not seeing them is simply because of a lack of Kibbud Av V'Em. Rav Hirsch says as follows: our tradition depends on the faithful transmission by parents to children and on the willing acceptance by the children from the hands of their parents. Therefore, the continuance of God's whole great institution of Judaism is totally dependent on the theoretical and practical obedience of children to the parents. It follows that honoring father and mother is the fundamental prerequisite for the eternity of the Jewish nation. Without this bond, the chain of generations is broken, the Jewish past is lost for the future, and the Jewish nation ceases to exist. Right? It's so funny because October 7th has been a powerful, I'm not sure what the right word is, when you're unconscious and you get revived. Is there a word that kind of describes that state when you're lost consciousness and you're brought back? What? Type of revival, but there's another word for it. I'm forgetting right now. Yeah, that's what it is. A medical term. It doesn't really matter. The idea is like this: Jews have had collective amnesia for quite some time. As a matter of fact, most people in this room tonight, and those people listening, have a form of national amnesia. Okay, you forgot who you are and where you came from. You don't fully appreciate the fact that you are part of a special group of people that have a special mission. You've forgotten exactly what your role is, what your mission is over here. We have forgotten the very important role, and we've forgotten to respect the roles that we each have in this world. And therefore, there's been a breakdown of tradition, for sure. In 2024, most Jews have been disconnected and broken away from their Jewish heritage. Since October 7th, my rabbi friends on campuses are busy, packed. Hillel houses, packed. Chabad houses, packed. All the outreach rabbis are packed. You can't get spots at Shabbat tables on campus anymore. Where are all these Jews coming from? Well, all of a sudden, they've reawoken to the idea that, you know what, we're different than everybody else. Nalini has a class here on Wednesday night, and she had a student who was here, a girl from Penn. We know the family very well, very disconnected, very secular family. She was shocked to see her walk into a synagogue. I think it's the first time she walked into a synagogue since her bat mitzvah. And she came to a class. And my wife asked her, why are you here? She said, October 7th. It's just like, I woke up. Like I said, Hashem tapped her on the shoulder and said, go, wake up. Let's go, people, wake up, wake up. So there's an awakening. Now, what is the awakening? Where does it take us? Right? By the way, for the people that think they're plugged in, right? They haven't woken up yet. But I'm telling you, my friends, wake up. Okay? Because the world is certainly changing very, very quickly. You think it's an accident that Mexico just elected a female president? Right? It's the first female Jewish president between Mexico, America, and Canada on this side of the planet. You think that's an accident? It's not an accident. I think it's horrible. It's a terrible setup for a horrible, horrible, horrible story that can happen in the future, from my perspective, right? I don't like it when Jews have high-powered positions in democratic governments. I think it's bad, especially when you're open Jewish bad. It's one thing if you're concealing your Jewishness, which I know it sounds completely counterintuitive, but someone who studied history and who has a little understanding of how these things unfold usually, not a good thing, bad thing. The fires that are raging all across California right now, not an accident. The fires in northern Israel, not an accident. There's correlations over here. The world falling apart, economies falling apart, inflation. Okay, all these things are super interconnected, and it creates a world that is unstable. The instability of the planet is not an accident. The instability of the planet is there, designed specifically to Wake us up. Well, what do we do? What's the response, Rabbi? What can I do? I'm just a New Yorker, living in Manhattan or living somewhere in New York City. What can I possibly do? And the answer is, there's a lot you can do, right? We don't believe that things are not interconnected. We believe that everything is interconnected and that your thoughts and your actions, they carry a tremendous amount of weight. When you're struggling to get on the call to deal with your parents, when you're struggling to show honor to your parents and you overcome that struggle, you bring a certain power to this planet. It regenerates you spiritually. So I say, spend time to clarify what your role is as a child to a parent, and then do everything in your power to go ahead and get it right. If you figure this part out, you're gold. Gold. Forget about all the brachot that come with it. But just you as a human being, just be mindful that the world around you is crashing and falling apart, and the only thing that we can do is try to do what is right. The easiest place to do things that are right are with our parents. We often mistakenly think that the way to do this is to take on external religious things. I'm going to wear a bigger kippah. I'm going to wear a longer something. I'm going to do mitzvah. I'm going to give tzedakah. Those are all good things, but that's not going to make a major change. The real change that I believe God wants is inner change, not chitzoni, external change. And then the question is, well, where is the most inner part of your whole consciousness coming from? It comes from our parents. When that part of you is truly rebooted, you'll see a whole slew of other things changing as well. Okay, Shulchan Aruch, Sif Aleph says one must be very fastidious. I need to get glasses. In the honoring of the father and the mother, and being in awe of them. Okay, you got to do whatever you can to have this honor of the parents. So what's considered awe? Sif 2. He shall not stand in the place set aside for his father, to stand in a sage council with his colleagues, or his special place for prayer. And he shall not sit in his special place to recline in his house. Don't sit in my recliner. And shall not contradict his words, and not rule regarding his words in front of him, or even say, my father's words are sensible. Don't even agree, oh yeah, Dad, that's right. You can't even say, yeah, Dad, that's right. Forget about saying he's wrong. What are you thinking, Dad? You can't even say that. You have to say it in a roundabout way. I'll tell you how to do it. And he shall not once call him by name, not during his life, nor his death. Rather, he shall say, my father, my master. I teach this to my children every single day. If his father's name was the same as the name of others, he should change their names if it is an unusual name that people are used to using. So here you have a very set, clear guideline. Okay, number one, your father has what we call a makom, a space. That space is his space. Generally, it's a dining room chair. It's his spot on the couch. It's his favorite armchair, whatever it is. That is his forever, and that is his domain alone. Yes. Whatever goes to the father goes to the mother. Yeah. We're not saying that it's not true for the mother. We're just using that as an example. Okay? Good question. Yes?
Is there a distinction between honoring and hearing?
Correct. There is. But this wouldn't mean we say that you have to honor the father and the mother. Right? It doesn't mean that you don't honor the mother.
I've heard a ton of times people say, don't sit at your father's chair at the table at your mother's, but they say that for their moms.
I say it to my kids all the time also. Again, most people don't know the most essential principles of Jewish law. And certainly when it comes to honoring our parents and fathers and mothers, whatever you do for your father, you have an equal responsibility to do your mother. And if you hear me not being explicit about it, I'm apologizing in advance. It's because I'm a chauvinist. And anyway, no, I'm not, but anyway, fine. So then this is a hard thing. Your dad says, hey, tomorrow's going to be 74 degrees. And you're like, well, no, I actually saw AccuWeather, and AccuWeather says it's going to be 90 degrees. So how do you do that? How do you, give your opinion without being a jerk? Yeah.
Is it possible that...
So yeah, you could say, is it possible? Oh, that's so interesting. I thought I heard someone say that, but interesting, like that. But don't go out of your way to disprove your parents. That's not your spot to do that. You can say, hey, here, look at this link. It's interesting. I just saw this, and share this to them, but you don't have to articulate it today. That's the beauty of living in the modern age. You could actually send messages where you're not contradicting and where it's actually private and quiet, and it's not in the public view. Yeah.
You're having like a conversation about something deeper than the weather, and you don't agree with your parents.
Yeah.
Like it can't be good communication. You just never say it.
No, so you could say things in a way where like, oh, that's so interesting, I've heard another opinion, I just heard another opinion. I'm not contradicting you, but I heard another opinion. You don't have to say you're categorically wrong. I'll prove it to you by bringing down a Ramban that says the exact opposite. And by the way, I want you to know this is a bigger issue. This whole idea of challenging parents is more of a masculine issue than it is a feminine issue. The nature of boys is that, and I am the father of 3 boys and 3 girls. So this could just be anecdotal evidence or just a truth. But my experience with boys and girls is that my boys were born to be competitors to me. Just teaching Jude how to play Settlers of Catan, he's trash talking me right away. The guy can't play the game. He's I'm going to kill you, Abba. I'm going to get this game. I'm going to get all the research. I'm like, dude, I'm going to crush you. I'm like, I have strategy. I've been playing this game for 12 years already. There's no way you're going to beat me. I crushed him. But where does that come from? When I play with my daughters, it's like it's all about loving and caring and like Abba put her dress on, or whatever it is, or we're playing a tea party. Like it's just like a very different kind of vibe. And therefore, like I would often say that girls want love from their parents, and the boys want discipline from their parents or dads. It's like a weird kind of thing. The whole idea of competitiveness is, and by the way, this might be true in families where you have a single parent, specifically a mom. The reason why kids do better in a father-mother marriage is because while the mother is all about being inclusive and encouraging and loving, the nature of a father is to be the disciplinarian and to push that kid to be a little bit more. And it's in that space, in that loving space, where you have that duality between the father and the mother, that kid grows up to be somewhat balanced, hopefully, right? Somewhat balanced, hopefully. Okay, anyway, so yeah.
Regarding what you just said, if like it happens to be I come from a very confrontational family, my dad does not go for the roundabout stuff, so I feel like if I learned this and I told him that,
Yeah.
he'll like be asking me not to do that. So is that okay?
No, so if you have a parent that says, hey, I don't want you to do this aspect, I annul this aspect of Kibbutz Avim, that's awesome. So for example, the halacha is, and we'll go through the halachot Bezrat Hashem next week, we'll start going through them over the next few weeks, is that when you, like for example, when your parent walks into the room, every single time you have to stand up.
So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so you...
Last time, but then you also said if somebody is witness to this.
So that's only true, by the way, when you're there alone. But if someone comes in, doesn't know, then you have a responsibility to get up or state, my father told me that I don't have to get up. Right? For example, like let's say I got this cup of water, which I finished, and I want my second cup now, thank you, let's say, for example, I made a bracha sha'akol earlier, and you brought me this glass of water right now. Halachically, I need to let everyone in the room know that I made my bracha before I drink this water. Now, you're going to assume, oh, he's drinking, he must have made the bracha before. But I can't create a situation where I'm misleading anybody. And therefore, I have a responsibility, halachic responsibility, to let you know that I actually made my bracha earlier. So you should not have any chashash, any doubt about me making or not making that bracha. Right? With our parents, same thing. Your parents tell you, I want you to be confrontational, I want you to argue with me. That's what our relationship is all going to be about. That's amazing. But there are limitations to that as well. Okay? Parents are not our peer. And sometimes parents need to be reminded that our children are not peers. We're not here to solve their problems. We're not here to be their therapists. We're not here to go ahead and do any of that kind of stuff. They have friends for that. They have therapists for that. That's not us. You weren't created to be their therapist. Now, you are here to serve them in a very specific kind of way, right? But certainly not to be their therapists and not to go ahead and solve all their problems. Okay, so he says as follows. We're almost finished. This is we're on number 13. Okay, last chunk, and we're going to call it a night. Sif Gimel. To what extent of awe of their mother and father, if a son was wearing nice clothes and sitting in front of the community, and his father and mother arrived in torn clothes and hit him, hit the son in the head, and spit in his face, right? He, the son, shall not embarrass them, but rather shall be silent and will be in awe of the King of Kings who commanded to do thusly. My mom remarried, and my stepdad said to me, how when he was growing up, he never looked his mother in the face out of awe. Like when his mother would walk in, as kids, they were all trained, they got up and they looked down. They never looked the mom in the face out of kavod. So he told me how when he was 15 years old, he started smoking cigarettes. And how afraid he was of his mother catching him, how scared he was. And he would hide it and cloak the smell and so on and so forth. And he said to me, he's like, I stopped doing it because I realized if my mom found out that I ever smoked a cigarette, I'd be so embarrassed that I just cut my wrist and bleed to death. I was the thought of that was the kind of kavod, of awe, of yirah that these people had for their parents. Not part of our culture, certainly, and not something that you and I, what's the big deal? It's just a cigarette. I'm not disrespecting her in any way, but can you imagine for a moment, you come out, you're wearing your nice Shabbat clothing, you walk into the Safra synagogue and your parents are there wearing torn clothing and they spit at you and they make fun of you publicly and it's embarrassing and you can do nothing about it. That's to the extent of Kibbud Av V'em. Is that hard? Super hard. Number 4, what is honoring? That's what yira is. What's honoring? He feeds him and gives him drink and dresses and covers. He welcomes and escorts out. And he will give him happy with a happy demeanor, right? A lit face, such that even if the son, bless you, feeds fattened livestock in each day and shows him the father an angry demeanor, punishment is brought onto him. You have to do everything in your power to sefer panim yafot, greet your parents in the most respectful, honorable possible way, even if you're in a bad mood, even if your boss fired you today, even if you have 1,000 reasons to be angry. It's your responsibility to go ahead and greet them every single time. You get a phone call, I'm so happy to hear from you, even though you're not, right? It's such a pleasure to have this conversation. Oh, it's not the best time right now, but I really miss you, I love you, I would love to speak to you a little bit later. Whatever it is, you have to figure out a way of doing your part to ensure that you're sharing the best parts of who you are. Rashi says as follows, he says, Imo v'aviv tira'u. He says, every man mentions the mother before the father because he is privy to the fact that a child fears a father. We did this already. And therefore by mentioning the mother first, the Torah emphasizes the duty of the father here also. However, in the case of honoring, right, it goes the other way around. Right? What's the connection with Shabbat over there? You shall observe my Shabbat. The pasuk juxtaposes the commandment of observing the Shabbat with that of fearing one's father and mother in order to state the following principle. Although I have admonished you regarding the fear of your father, nevertheless, if he tells you to desecrate the Shabbat, don't listen to him. And this is also the case with the other commandments. When I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, my parents would often send me to the grocery store to buy them cigarettes. I don't know if anyone had this experience, maybe it was just a me thing. I was 7 years old, and I would go to the local, the corner store, pick up some cigarettes, Kent 100 light. That's what they smoked, I remember. And I'd go to the store, and as a 7-year-old, and I did this for years. They were crazy chain smokers. And at some point, I think when I was 10 or 11, I found out that smoking is really bad for you. And I told my parents that I can't buy you cigarettes anymore. They said, no, you have to buy cigarettes. I would go to the store, whatever it is. I'm I'm not doing it. And I even at some point, I remember because they would travel a lot, they would go duty free and come back with cartons and cartons of cigarettes. You know what I'm talking about? Those 5 packs, those 5 bricks of cigarettes. And I just take them, crush them, and flush them down the toilet. And I got in trouble for it. And I was under bar mitzvah, so I'm probably not going to burn in hell for all those things. It's their fault. They raised me poorly. But I would say that I have zero regrets for doing any of that. Because the Torah says, Tishmar nafshecha. They have a responsibility to go ahead and to live a healthy life. And if they're making poor choices which is destroying their life, I have a responsibility, a moral responsibility to protect my parents. Okay? So I would not engage in any of those kinds of stuff. If your parents want you to do something that could harm them, both physically or even spiritually, you have zero obligation to listen to them. This is also true, God willing, when you find that special person with a twinkle in his eye, right? Or her eye, right? You find your bashert, your nasib, right? And you want to get married and your parents don't like that person, You have zero obligation to pay attention to anything they have to say. It's not their choice. It is your choice, not theirs to make. Your own personal choice, which is very hard because you've been spent your whole entire life, honoring and fearing your parents. So how does this work? Well, it's very simple. Your responsibility in certain areas are to you yourself. You have a mitzvah of getting married. You have a mitzvah of having children. You have a mitzvah of building a family. That's your responsibility, not your parents. Your parents can't interfere with that. They can tell you what they think, but ultimately it's going to be your choice, and that decision is yours and yours alone. There are 3 explicit categories where the Shulchan Aruch mentions that you don't have to listen to your parents. Number 1, like we just saw over here, your parents ask you to break Shabbat? No, I'm not breaking Shabbat for you. I want you to get in the car and drive with us to dinner now. I order you, I'm your parents, you don't have to go with them. Okay? You are told to marry a particular person, and or not to marry a particular person. Zero obligation to listen to your parents. It's your choice alone. And number 3 is, ready? If you believe that you could learn in another country from a particular rabbi or rebbitzin, right, that you can't do locally, and you want to travel to develop a deeper appreciation for your Judaism, your parents say don't go, you have zero obligation to listen to your parents. These are 3 explicit places where you don't listen to your parents. And they were super important to me because my parents were definitely not giving me permission to go to Israel. Had I listened to them, I would not be standing here right now. So by me choosing to honor my parents by not honoring them, I was able to bring more honor to them. Right? Think about that. Okay, last. I am the Lord your God. Ani Hashem Elokecha. Where you're in the plural form, right? Meaning to say that both you and your father are obligated to honor me. Therefore, do not listen to him to negate my commandments. Now, what constitutes fear? One must not sit in his place, speak in his stead, when his father turns to speak or contradict him. What constitutes honor? One must give the father and the mother food and drink, clothe them, and put them to put on their shoes and accompany them to enter or leave. Meaning, when they come to your house, you got to greet them and send them away. Now, just going back to that point over there of clothing your parents. So that if you want to ask me what is the halachic definition of honoring your parents, it's to buy them clothing. It's to feed them, right? That's the halachic obligation we have to our parents. So what does that look like? So does that mean I have to spend my own money to buy them clothing? Does it mean I have to spend my own money to feed them? And the halacha is no, you don't. The halacha is that to fulfill the baseline halacha would be for you to buy them clothing and food with their own money. So now I'm doing with my money, that's great. That's extra brownie points for you. But you have zero obligation to buy them clothing and food with your money. The halachic obligation is to do it with their money. The halachic obligation is for you to do what you can to show them respect and honor. The halacha has a very specific way, a very specific idea of what that looks like. And therefore, we have all these interesting ideas in our own head of what that looks like because of cultural reasons. And I would argue that your responsibility is to, while of course there are halachic norms that are expressed through culture, but your first obligation to understand what the halachic responsibilities are. Yeah.
Is a parent allowed to, I guess, give you permission to disregard any of these? So, like, for example, is your parent allowed to tell you, like, I don't really care if you sit in my place?
Yes, they can. Yes, they totally can. They could totally absolve themselves from, you could contradict me, you could sit in my seat, you can do all these things. Yeah. Another question? Anyone else have a question? Yeah.
Why specifically those 3 things that you don't have to listen to?
Well, the Shabbat one and the halachot is simple, right? That's because
So Shabbat and
it's halachot in general. It's all halachot. Whatever the Torah says, the Torah comes before your parents because the parents are obligated to God. And therefore, the obligation goes to God, and therefore, even if your parents say no, it doesn't matter. They're obligated to God, and therefore, I'm obligated to God. And therefore, it goes God first before your parents. And as far as the other 2, they make so much sense. It's the places where parents can overstep their authority. Parents often make the mistake in thinking that their role is to tell the children what to do, make the choices for them. That's not what a parent's supposed to do. And it's the hardest thing in the world. I'm guilty of this all the time. I'm telling you as a parent. The hardest thing in the world to do is to create space for your children to make their own choices, even when you see them making train wreck decisions. It's the hardest thing in the world to do because every parent wants to protect their child. Now, a parent believes that they know better. and it's probably true, and most of the time, but not all the time. And therefore, a parent's job, their role, is to be more of like a preceptor, someone who's there to advise them and give them the space to make their choices. When it comes to choices that have to do with you and your future, that's on you, not on them. Only you can decide that. They can't decide that for you. So specifically when it comes to shidduchim, that's your choice and not their choice.
But it wouldn't be specifically for that if it was other, I feel like that could fall under other things.
Like what?
So a large window. Moving out of your parents' home. basically.
Yeah, so that's a complicated. They can't hold you back at some point from moving out.
Okay, so it's just the concept of that. It doesn't
Correct,
matter.
correct. And then we're going to break down exactly what those concepts are, God willing, over the next coming weeks. Bezrat Hashem. It's a great question. And then lastly, the Israel one is like, I think is so appropriate. You know, there's never been a time in history where Israel makes such a great place of like just getting away and like studying and like rebooting and concentrating. Can you do it in America? The answer is yes, you can. Take in a second. I'll go 1, 2. And then, but there's something to be said about getting away from me leaving my parents' house was one of the most amazing choices I ever made in my life. Not because I wanted to disrespect them in any way. It's because it gave me the opportunity of kind of like flexing my own muscles and learning to fly on my own. And that empowered me to take full responsibility for every relationship, including my relationship with them. I couldn't do that before. I was too engulfed in their own reality. I needed a break. So sometimes the Torah itself creates a leniency, so to speak, for the individual to empower them, say, you know what, if you feel stuck and trapped by your parents, know that if you're going to go ahead and develop yourself to become something more, go study, develop yourself, because you'll come back stronger and more aligned with honoring and respecting and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Piggyback off her question, so what you were saying about things being on your future and that being on you.
Yeah.
Does that at all apply to the secular courses of study and also parnasah, like what you choose to do for work? Or like should your parents be able to tell you to do that?
No, your parents should not be able to tell you what to do for work. Again, they could guide you, they could influence you, but ultimately it's going to be your choice.
And is that like halachically ironclad or there's nuance to it?
I mean, there's always nuance to everything. So, it depends on the context, circumstance, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Is your father's smartphone off limits once he passes away?
That's a very good question. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think it. I think it's no. Yeah, it's no longer off limits. Yeah. Yeah. No other questions? Well, Tovski Bezrat Hashem. We will continue the conversation next week. Have a Shabbat to everybody.